Thank you. We are recording and we will hopefully be able to answer all of your questions. But if there are more questions than we can answer at the end, we will get to those and then we'll respond to all of you. So if I don't have your emails, please put them in the chat. Thanks so much.
Okay, so I am going to share my screen. And I am going to play this video, except that it's hidden by the, hold on, oh, there we are. Okay, so I gotta hide myself or I can't see. All right, can everybody see my screen? Liz, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so this is me, and there's my electric car. And this is a personal story, but I've done a lot of research, so you'll see there's a tremendous amount of information here. But it's my opinion, and if I'm saying something controversial, I've tried to check it out to make sure it's true. But if anybody finds anything that I say wrong, please let me know. But anyway, here I am. I'm at the Weaver's Way Co-op in Ambler, where they have a charging station. I don't normally charge there, but I wanted to get a nice picture. So, okay, so hold on. All right. So what I was going to talk about today is, first, I'm just going to give a really quick overview of the types of electric cars, the general categories. I'll tell you about my car, and a little bit on the credits and rebates, although I have to say they're constantly changing, the advantages of electric cars, charging, and kind of what you need to think about when you buy your car, if you want to. I'm going to define range awareness, a very important concept, and go through a little process to think through how you would make a decision about going electric. So, electric car types. The one that is most common right now is the hybrid electric vehicle. And actually that is something where there's an internal combustion engine, just like every other car, but it also has some electric functionality. You can't plug it in. The most famous one is the Toyota Prius. And it gives you better gas mileage, but it also at low speeds doesn't actually use the internal combustion engine. So it's better for emissions. The plug-in hybrid electric is, it's just like a hybrid, except that they've allowed you to plug it into a wall so that you can get a little bit of charging and it can actually drive at normal speeds. But it usually only gives about 20 miles of range. Now that might seem like you would never use it, but it turns out all three of my sons have had these cars, and one of them in particular lived in Florida. He worked maybe less than 10 miles away, and he could pretty much charge his car back at the house and drive every single day. And he spent a whole summer there and pretty much only got 1 tank of gas, and that was on his way home. So, but here's the big one, the battery electric vehicles. If you see that there's some people call them BEVs, or they're really generally just called EVs, and these are 100% electric. There is no internal combustion engine. And the most famous one is the Tesla, but there's a number of other ones that have been around for years, and there's many, many, many more coming on the horizon. So let's talk about my car. We got it in 2018. We had a 2004 Toyota Prius, so we're not exactly new car people. That's 14 years old. And, we spent a lot of money on this car. I just really wanted to understand the fast charge option, which ended up costing a bit more. And what you'll see through this conversation is I'm not sure that that is worth the extra money, but you can make your own decision on that, but I'll give you more information. Tons of bells and whistles coming from my 2004 Prius. You know, we got the backup camera, all these alerts when you change lanes, all that kind of cool new stuff. Apple CarPlay, so the phone automatically connects in with the console. And the heated steering wheel and the seats, which I'd never had. So this car, I have a picture. I hope it's going to come up, but it's a small SUV. It's got a ton of headroom. My 6'5" son, when he comes home, loves to drive the car, and he has plenty of room. It fits 5 Philadelphia recycling blue bins in the back. And I know that because when the city was having trouble collecting recycling over the winter due to COVID, I would take my neighbor's stuff to the recycling center. One time, the recycling truck wasn't there, so I actually transferred some of the stuff into a trash can and unfortunately discovered that the trash can did not fit into the car next time I tried to go. So that's how I know that. It's fun to drive. It's quiet, it's quick. They have a functionality called one pedal driving where you pretty much just, when you let go of the accelerator, it slows down itself. And this is one drawback. The seats are fine for me, but if you go online and you looked at the Chevy Bolt, a lot of people complain about the seat. And my husband is one of them. And that's actually a major drawback for us because driving long trips would be a serious problem. But this is one of the screens in the car. This is behind the steering wheel. It's got a lot of information. This is like, could tell you the traveling distance. It could show you the tire pressure, but this over here is EV specific. And what this is that says 128 miles. That is the number of miles that the car is predicting you will be able to travel if you keep traveling the same way you've been traveling before. Okay, my screen. Okay, sorry. And up top, the maximum is what it's predicting if you started driving slower or you turn off the air conditioner or something like that. And the bottom is if you drove fast and you just turned everything on. This over here is the center console. And this is where your map would show up, the radio, all those kind of things. And this is a little piece that's showing the actual kind of charge rate of the battery. Now, just a quick thing on the tax credits. This is based on research I've done recently. And we don't know what's going to happen with the Biden infrastructure plan, because I know that one of the things that they find very important is encouraging electric cars. But there's been a $7,500 credit for new cars for the first 200,000 cars per auto company. So when I bought the car, that was still true for the Chevy Bolt. But they have since sold 200,000 cars. And so no GM cars are eligible at the moment. Tesla has also sold more than 200,000 cars. So both of those don't have the credit right now. I would imagine that's going to change, but I can't guarantee. The other thing is it's only for new cars. If you lease it, you don't get the credit, but your dealer would. So they should be able to pass on the savings to you. And the thing that you have to be careful of, though, is that if you want this tax credit, you actually have to be paying at least that much in taxes because it's a use it or lose it kind of thing. You can't roll it over to the next year, which hopefully also the Biden administration will change, but we'll see. Pennsylvania has an alternative fuel rebate program, and it right now it's $750, but you go to the website, they say first come, first serve. I don't know what the timeline is. They do have $1,000 for low income, and it also includes used cars, which is pretty cool. But one warning is if you do end up doing this, you have to apply through DEP's e-grant program, which was really written for people who are applying for grants. So there's a lot of extra information, and it's pretty confusing. You'll figure it out, but it is confusing. And the other thing that's funny about it is it's taxable income. So you end up getting a 1099 for whatever funds the state gives you. One more thing, PK. They want to know who's driving EVs. So if you tell them, they will give you a $50. All right, so advantages of electric vehicles. No local emissions. When you drive around, there's no tailpipe, so you are not putting any nitrous oxide or any other gases into the environment. Now, some people say, well, yeah, but the electricity you're using could be from coal or natural gas, but one solution to that is that you buy renewable electricity, or, especially since we're in a solar conference here, you could get solar. And we have solar on our house, so technically our Bolt is solar powered. And you can charge at home, except for long trips. No benzene gas or oil. Fuel is cheaper. I'll give you an analysis of that in a second. There's less routine maintenance. Again, I'll give you more details on that. And it's fun to drive. There's an ad on TV where they show I think it's a Nissan, but it's driving through the city and it's sort of flying through. And I know why they do that is because you actually kind of feel like you're in an airplane. Just the way it sounds, the whole thing. Okay, so let's talk about routine maintenance. You got to do these things. You got to have your annual inspection, you got to rotate the tires, and you got to put windshield wiper fluid. What about those things, you might say? Annual emission tests, oil change, transmission fluid. Well, guess what? There's no emission sticker because there's no tailpipe. So those all go. There is another advantage in that it has regenerative braking, which means as you slow down, it is braking. I mean, when you let go of the accelerator, it will brake and it uses the power of the car to actually slow down. So your brakes last a lot longer. They don't really use the mechanical brakes. And I know this is actually true for all of those electric vehicles I told you about. And with our Prius, we did not have to get new brakes till over 100,000 miles because it also has the regenerative braking. There is one thing that you don't have in a regular car. They have a temperature control system, which requires fluid, but you only have to change it 150,000 miles. So not too worried about that one. And you might be worried about the battery. So the big battery that you use is, has an 8-year, 100,000 mile warranty. Most of the cars haven't gotten there yet, but they're thinking that the battery should be fine and they should last much longer than that. So charging. Uh-oh. Okay. Okay, well, sorry guys. I don't know what happened here. There's some pictures of me charging, so I'll tell you what they were supposed to be. When you get the car, it comes with a kind of a fancy extension cord. It's got a charging cable on one side and just a 110 plug on the other. And we actually don't have any outdoor cables, outlets. So we actually plug it in through a window in the basement. And that's what this picture is, but for some reason, it's not showing up. All right. So you can charge at home, fancy extension cord, just like I described. If you need more power, you could get a dryer type outlet, a 240 volt outlet. Electricians know how to do it in homes. That would charge faster. And if you wanted to, you could get a charging station, also known as an EVSE, and there's a picture of one. There's many types, and I'm sure you've all seen them at grocery stores and around. Another place, a lot of workplaces are starting to get charging stations. Or I'm sure you've seen them at shopping centers, hotels, and most of those have these type of 240 volt EVSEs. On the highway, you might see that same 240 volt, but it's, as you're going to see in a minute, it's not that fast. So that would be very hard to go long distances. So they're coming up with something called fast charging, higher voltage, and there's a lot of innovation in this space. And of course, the regenerative braking. This picture just shows you that right now, this car was slowing down and it was generating 11 kilowatts. Funny thing about this is the Chevy Bolt has a hill mode and it tells it to stop charging because you live on the top of a hill and it wants you to have enough extra room in your battery so that you can charge as you go down the hill. All right. Oh, all right. This is a problem. I am really sorry. There is a this is a table, and Liz, can I stop for a second?
Sure.
Can you? I'm sorry.
Do you want me to share the PowerPoint?
No, I don't. Hold on. Just give me a second.
Skip to the next slide.
What's that? No, I need to get to my slide, and it's for some reason it's not displaying. Okay, I'm gonna come back. Can you see my screen?
No.
No.
Start sharing again.
Hold on. Okay, there's my thing. Let me just go back.
Hooray!
I'll show you in a second. Oh, yeah, there we go. I'm just going to show you that. That's me. See, charging. And this is the fancy extension cord I was talking about. And that is our window. And that is us plugging into a 110 outlet. And the only reason I'm showing you that is just to show you charging is not a big deal. There it is. See? And then there's the battery. The battery fits right underneath the car. And it is one of the things that's really nice about it is that it gives you a real low center of gravity, so that it's really easy to, you know, it just gives the driving experience. It's good. So I'm just going to go real quick through this. And now we get to this. Okay, charging data. I didn't believe anything anybody told me, so I actually did all this analysis to see what I was going to see on my car. And the Bolt allows you to charge at 2 different levels, this 8 amp and 12 amp, both on the normal 120 volts. So that's just a regular plug, right? And this looks really slow. It says 3.5 miles per charge hour. You got to wait an hour to get 3.5 miles. And that sounds terrible, except that if you plug it in at night, it gives you 35 miles. If you plugged it in every single night for a year, it would give you 12,662 miles. That is more than the average amount that anyone drives. Now, the 12 amp one it is sort of like a space heater. So it's perfectly reasonable. You could, anybody could put that on any of their circuits that you feel comfortable with a space heater, and it would charge it faster. But let's say you know that you're going to drive more than 48 miles in a day, so you could get this higher level, and this is a normal home receptacle. I am really sorry. I don't know why it's responding to things I'm not doing, so I gotta apologize for that. But anyway, but in real life, you basically charge when the battery's low and when you think you might need power. I usually keep it around 125 unless I know I'm going to go on a longer trip. And here's the big question. How long does it take to charge? A few seconds, because it really is the amount of time it takes you to plug in the car and walk away. So what about cost? Well, here's an analysis. Electricity. This is a normal cost, 13.5 cents for pico. My calculations tell me I get 3.7 miles per kilowatt hour. So if you just do the division, it's going to be 3.6 cents a mile. If you have a gasoline car, and this is the 289 is a recent price because I haven't actually gotten gas, but I had to look it up. If you're using those values, then it's actually 7.2 cents a mile. And if you calculate out for if you drove 8,000 miles a year, you'd be saving about $287. If you drove 12,000 miles, it's $431. Warning, gasoline includes a gas tax. So the state's looking at that, so they may come up with some fee for EVs, but you know, hopefully it won't be more than you're already saving. And if you don't charge at home, the cost can vary from free at like grocery stores and some hotels and different places to fairly expensive if you want to do the fast charging. Okay, so just a real quick. I think this is important because you're going to buy a car, you kind of need to know what you're buying. So the J1772, that's the name of this standard port. It looks like that. This is on my Chevy Bolt. This is the one that is attached to that extension cord we talked about, and it can go to either the 120 or the 240 volt. Now for the fast charging, this is the fast charging, and you can see that it's just a couple extra options on the same charging device. But if you don't buy it, when you open this up, it is going to be a blank space. Well, probably be a plastic thing. But anyway, another thing that is out there is the CHAdeMO, which was on the Nissan Leaf, although I think they could be phasing it out. But basically, that was Nissan's fast charging. So if you actually went to a fast charger and you had this kind of device on your machine and your car, and this was the cable, then you would be in trouble. So this was pretty confusing when I first got the car. But I think this is getting phased out. The CCS is what the American standard. It's also the European standard. And however, Tesla has their own port style. And they deal with the fact that everyone else is using the J1772 by providing an adapter for their cars. But this is what the Tesla looks like. And it is what allows their cars to connect to their entire network and some super fast charging, which I'll talk about in a minute. All right, well, how do you find these chargers? Well, there's a great app called PlugShare. It's crowdsourced. It seems to have all the data from all the different systems. It allows you to, all these different options you can filter for whether you want to pay or you don't want to pay, whether you want fast charging, what kind of port you have. You can tell it what kind of car you have. So you have the Chevy Bolt, and it'll tell you where all the charging stations are if you need. In fact, people, if they register, you can actually put your own home charger on if you want to, but then you'd be asking people to come charge at your house, which you certainly don't have to. Anyway, there's a bunch of other apps. There's ChargePoint, Blink, Greenlots. There's a ton of them. Tesla, but all of these folks seem to have their information on PlugShare. So this is the one you can go to see everything. But okay. Range awareness. So normally people think of an electric car, and the biggest worry is that you're going to run out of electricity. And that's known as range anxiety. But what happens is after you own the car, it really becomes range awareness. You know how far you can go. You know what you're planning to do the next day. You know, and you have access to PlugShare. So I would say if you're going to get an electric car, you want it to have over 200 miles because then you feel comfortable. I had a friend who was an early adopter and his car was like 120 miles, and he replaced it with a Nissan Leaf, and it just made him feel very much more comfortable because you can always keep your car over 100 miles. Now, if you're driving around town, just, you know, go to the grocery store, taking the kids to school, those kind of errands that you run, you probably won't have any problem if you just have a 120 volt outlet, which is all we have. Now, if you need to go on a trip and the round trip is between 150 and 200 miles, you're going to be fine. But when you get back, you're going to need to allow time to recharge. And if you only have a 110 charger, you're going to have to, you know, you're going to have a couple days, like where you're not going to drive another 150 miles. If you have a one-way trip over 100 miles, you really want to figure out where the charger is on the other end. Well, maybe you're going on vacation. Maybe you're going to a hotel or something. Maybe you're going to the shore and you're going to stay at a hotel. You know, look for one that has a charger. But if you're going on a long distance trip, this is where you can run into trouble, especially with a Chevy Bolt. But you can use plug share. You can plan if you're willing to spend extra time and, you know, take your meals when you're charging, those kind of things, but it will take you longer unless you have a Tesla.
Marion, you're freezing. Marion? I'm not sure what the problem is. Marion, you're freezing.
Hello?
Hi, there you go. You froze for a minute.
Okay. Okay. So, as part of my learning my car and understanding like what was going on, I decided to test some of this fast charging. These three numbers you saw before, and that's where I'm charging at home or at something like Weaver's Way Co-op. And you know, none of those are fast if you're trying to get a long distance. So the Chevy dealership, oh my goodness. The Chevy dealership, this is acting on its own, by the way, promised fast charging. So I went to one of them and it wasn't really that fast. Instead of the 23 miles in an hour, I got 66. Well, that's not great if you're trying to drive a long way. So then I went to the big folks who are Electrify America, EVgo, and this is an EVgo example, and they have huge charging, and they say that they can give 150 kilowatts, and so I went and I tried it, and that's the best I could do. So I did some research. You know, the fact of the matter is the Chevy Bolt battery, it just can't accept more than 55 kilowatts. So there's just no way that it can charge any faster than that. So you'd have to figure out how, if you're going to drive a long way, so you want to go to Boston, you're not going to make it on, so you're going to have to stop, maybe have lunch, dinner, whatever, and, you know, wait for it to charge. Now, here's where Tesla has done an amazing job, and they can accept over 200 kilowatts, right? You can see that that's a lot more than the 55, and they are working on more, and they have an amazing network. So if you're really going to travel long distances, you might have to figure out how to get a Tesla. But anyway, here's an example of an owner's map. This is someone I know who has a Tesla. He, before the pandemic, he used to drive 30,000 miles. And Tesla actually had this map that would track everything he did. So he basically said the network is so good that pretty much he would decide where to charge it based on kind of what he needed, whether he needed a restaurant or to go shopping or those kind of things. So, but the decision-making process, you need to think about how you use your car and your situation. Can you charge at home? And you may just need a 120 outlet. And here is a picture of a car that I spotted in Chestnut Hill where they are actually charging a Tesla with an extension cord running out from their house. So it's not recommended, but it does work. But if you are going to do it, make sure you have a super heavy duty extension cord. Are you renting? You should talk to your landlord. They might, you know, they might be able to give you an outlet. They might, you know, maybe it's just a 110. Maybe they could actually install a charging station because, say, it's a big place. They want to have it as an amenity. Just an interesting fact is that California law requires that landlords allow you to support your EV. They won't pay for it necessarily, but they would let you install something to charge your EV. Maybe Pennsylvania should get on board. You know, then ask yourself, can I charge at work? Is there a charger nearby that I can use? Do you have two cars? If you do, and you have some way of charging, it's likely that one of the cars could be your long distance car and your other car could be, you know, bob around town. Obviously 2 cars, I'm talking like more than, hopefully not one person with 2 cars, but a family with 2 cars. And then you have to ask yourself, how far do you drive? You know, is it less than 50 miles? 120 outlets, fine. Otherwise, you'll install a 240 outlet. How often do you go on long trips? If it's only a couple times a year, maybe you just rent a car for the trips. Or maybe you make a deal with a friend that, you know, maybe they want to try out an electric car and you could use their car. Or you could add travel time to your trips and just make it so it's a sort of a slightly different type of trip where part of it is including the charging time. And if you don't have money for a new car, there's more and more used cars on the market. And I would say if you, this is just my gut opinion, that 2017 is sort of a good year. That's when the Chevy Bolt came out. That's when, you know, a lot of technology was improving. But it's a way to get into the EV market. So a couple other features, just because people are probably curious. There's self-driving. I don't know a lot of it. Tesla is definitely.
We're going to need to wrap up this section.
Oh yeah, I'm almost. This is done.
Okay.
Okay. Dog in car up. I just had to show you that because I thought it was hilarious. When you turn off your car, it asks you if you're going to leave your dog in the car, and it'll put this screen up. I did find a way to do it on my Bolt. Didn't have a nice, pretty screen, but I could still leave the dog in the car. And just the last thing, don't forget the other internal combustion engines. See?
That was great. Thanks, Marion. I think because we've run over time a little bit,
okay.
We're going to respond to the questions that are in the chat. Marion, if I could ask you to do that, but we're going to turn it over to the Penn State students now. And if you stop sharing your screen, awesome. So Travis, this is Travis Barrow. He's a Penn State student and has been kind of the team leader of this EV conversion team at Penn State. And I'll let him introduce his teammates.
Hello, everyone. I'll just pull up our presentation here. Give me 1 second.
And while he's doing that, I don't know if there are other programs in Pennsylvania, but Drexel University also has an EV car building team. They have an EV club, and they do build an EV every year. But these 2 colleges may be the only 2 in Pennsylvania that currently build EVs. So I think it's just a very interesting aspect for all of us to be aware of. And the members of the EV club, you guys may know. So Ali, I may be speaking in ignorance. So correct me if you know of other colleges or universities that have EV teams.
Off the top of my head, there is a decent number of advanced vehicle teams. We usually compete in competitions that we've had where we compete against other schools who are also trying to convert their vehicles to all electric. Penn State currently is not in the eco car competition that we've usually competed in, but we'll talk a little more about that through the slides.
Great.
So hello, everyone. We are Team EV Few, and we're going to talk about our presentation today where we're converting a hybrid Saturn Vue into a fully electric vehicle. So here's just an outline of what we're going to talk about. We're going to introduce every member of the team. We're going to briefly go over the growing demand for electric vehicles, both socially and economically. I'll introduce the team, like our actual organization. We'll talk about the original vehicle and what previous teams have done before this project was handed down to us, the scope of our project this semester, and just the different designs and processes we've used to meet these deliverables in our project. Without further ado, we will introduce ourselves first. So Anish.
Hey everybody, my name is Anish. I'm a senior in electrical engineering. I'm the project manager for this team, and I love working with electric cars, and I hope to do so after I graduate as well.
And as I've been introduced before, my name is Travis Barrow. I am a senior as well at Penn State in mechanical engineering. I am not technically the leader of the team itself, that'd be a niche, but I am the head of the outreach portion. So I've been doing a lot of the coordinating and presenting because we've done numerous schools by now. And this is our first webinar, so it's really cool. That's me, Alistair.
Hi everybody, I'm Alistair Detweiler. I'm also a mechanical engineering senior. I'm responsible for the cooling system of the View, and after graduation I hope to continue working with renewable energy sources and possibly electric vehicles.
Hello everyone, I'm Sam. I'm a senior in mechanical engineering as well. In addition to the advanced vehicle team, I'm also in Navy ROTC, so I'll be joining the Navy after graduation. I like working on mechanical systems. This project's really fun, so I look forward to finishing it.
Hey everyone, my name is Kevin Morano. I am a senior in mechanical engineering and biomedical engineering. I'm the last of the capstone members for this, so the people taking this as a capstone instead of volunteer work. And then after graduation, I'm actually moving down to DC to do technical consulting.
Hi, I'm the last one of the group. I'm actually a volunteer. My name's Robert Sable. I did this class last semester because I enjoyed dealing with like hands-on work and more of the vehicle because I like it as a side hobby. I look to continue on, and I'm focused, even though I'm a mechanical engineer, I'm focusing more on the electrical work within the vehicle. And also with us, there's many other people long volunteering with me. They can't be here right now, but just to mention them.
So as many people know, there's changes coming in terms of emissions regulations. There's been projections of worldwide bans on fossil fuel powered vehicles altogether, which will hopefully be implemented in the coming years to help reduce our carbon footprint. So states like Massachusetts, California, they have a plan in place to have the sale of new gas powered vehicles banned by 2035. Other countries like Canada, the EU as a whole, and actually Norway plan to ban new gas-powered vehicles from being sold. Norway is kind of heading it. They want to ban all new gas-powered vehicles being sold by 2025, which is really coming close. So there's this huge push to move away from fossil fuel burning vehicles. And this produces this growing demand for more electric vehicles to be produced by automakers. So people like Tesla, who's already doing it, but also the other major companies like Ford, Chevy, BMW, Volkswagen, they're all seeing this trend. So they're making this push to have more and more electric vehicles on the market for consumers to buy. So a little bit about the advanced vehicle team. So their mission is more so to provide a learning experience to the grad and undergrad students across just a complete variety of academic disciplines by both lowering fuel consumption and eliminating it altogether, but still maintaining that consumer demand, because we want to make sure that the vehicles that we're creating, yeah, they are better for the environment, but we want to make sure that it's also something that people would want to buy. So they're doing this mostly for eco-car competitions, which is how our vehicle was handed down to us. It was previously a participant in an eco-car competition. Penn State's currently not doing it this year, mostly because of COVID-related reasons. The competition isn't as big as it used to be, but it gave us this opportunity to take this vehicle, and as a capstone project, we can convert it to a fully electric vehicle and just highlight how it can be done. And the other main reason for doing this is actually the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. So we reached out to them. They actually awarded us a mini grant of $3,000 to complete our project. So that funding has gone a long way in terms of getting the necessary parts and services that we needed to complete our project. But as part of that grant, we were required to share our processes and what we've learned with different schools and audiences so that hopefully we can persuade the public to have an interest in purchasing an EV themselves, and also just build interest on working in the renewable energy field. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Rob and Anish, who will talk about what has been done to the vehicle in the past already.
All right, so as stated before, I did work on this the previous semester, and what we ended up doing was, since it was a hybrid vehicle, we pretty much removed all the internal combustion engine aspects of this. So the generator, the engine itself, the fuel tank, which is the reservoir for the gasoline or diesel, and we also removed the GPIM, which is how electricity was converted from the generator to the actual batteries to make sure that it was compatible with DC to AC and vice versa. And then I'll let Anish talk about the wiring.
So with the idea that when we convert a hybrid car into an electric, we are removing a lot of combustible components like the engine, the fuel pump, and the generator that's connected to the engine to power the battery. And with these components, at least today, there is a heavy electrical side to it, where like you have sensors, you have controllers that basically observe and monitor these components and give data to our controller. And so the team's objective was to remove the wiring that's not needed anymore, and then reconfigure it or redesign it to work as an electric, because we can't have the car looking for an engine anymore because it just doesn't exist. So later on in this presentation, I'll go a little more into detail of it, but currently we have taken out the not needed wiring, and now we're focusing on just reconfiguring what's needed.
So in terms of the overall scope of our project, so right there was what we were handed. This is what the Saturn Vue looked like when we first started this project. And our main areas of work have been the CAN system, the controller area network, both in terms of software and circuitry. Anish will go a little more in depth about what the CAN actually is, because it's not a very familiar aspect of vehicles, but it's very, very important. Rob will talk about the wiring diagrams that we were creating for this project so that it will be simpler for future teams to continue our work and build upon what we've done. Alistair is going to talk about the cooling system in the vehicle and how we needed to change that given all the components we had to take out. And finally, the Brusa charger mount is going to be talked about by Kevin, and how we made sure that the charger is mounted in the vehicle so that we don't damage that very expensive piece of hardware. But before that, Kevin is going to talk about how there's a huge interconnection with our project with just a variety of different backgrounds.
Yeah, so since most of us, with the exception of Anish, are mechanical engineers, and given the project, it's a lot of different components that go into it. Transforming a car from a hybrid to an electric vehicle is not very simple to do. So we really need to reach out to different disciplines and get a lot of people involved to help our team. So really no one's an expert in everything, and that's really important to know for a project like this. So we had to reach out to some computer science and software engineering students to help with the coding aspects, electrical engineers such as Anish that are taking care of the wiring and the transferring of the fuse boxes, mechanical engineers such as myself who are working on a lot of the mechanical components such as the charger mount or the cooling system. And then we also have some communications and business and marketing people involved that are really helping with the outreach portions and the purchasing of components that we need to get this project done.
All right, Anish, you want to talk about the CAN system?
Yep. So the CAN system can be thought of like the brain of the car, in the sense that it is a component that basically communicates with the other components in the cars and ensures that everything is functioning correctly. And if not, there is a shutdown procedure or a safety procedure to ensure that the car is not running without all its essential components, and and like you're safe, like in the sense that now let's just say that your battery is disconnected. So there will still be a little bit of rolling that you might experience with your car. And we want to ensure that like you are able to brake safely and get out of the car or be in a safe environment so that you don't crash into anybody, you don't get in a scenario where it's dangerous for your life. And what our objective was to ensure that one, the picture on the right, you are looking at the master vehicle controller. That is the main controller of the car. It takes data from other controllers like the battery module, like the battery monitoring system, the shifter monitoring system, the driver system, and all that. And then it compiles it, and then it executes them on however we command it. That can go from the throttle to the gearbox and all that, all those components. And what we first did was we basically ensured that all the wiring is in place, like in terms of the controllers. And then the picture on the right, the picture on the left is basically a brief overview of what a CAN topology might look like. This is like how the various controllers are interconnected together. So this is like a good overview of that. And so our team's work is two ways. One is the software aspect where we are really coding the car to work in a particular fashion. But there is also a hardware component or a wiring component where we need to physically connect these components and ensure that they're securely and appropriately connected. And that's going to be my next slide. So here you can see that there are a couple of components that are either now not there anymore. So for example, the picture on the left, there was a control module there that just doesn't exist anymore. And it's our job to ensure that the controller, the main controller, knows that it doesn't exist anymore and doesn't seek it out. So that let's say like you're in the highway and suddenly like your controller is seeking this module out, it can cause a lot of problems in terms of malfunctioning. Like you might have to stop the car midway. And so we want to ensure that all these components are like coded for and electrically taken care of as well. And then you have the circuit on the right. So in this entire loop of things, we want to ensure that there are proper terminations. Terminations are basically ensuring that the controller understands where this control starts and where it ends, so that like any communication, like let's say like you're on radio, like anytime you communicate with somebody, you shouldn't loop back. Like you shouldn't hear them again and again and again. And that's the idea of this. So we need to ensure that when we take a component out, if it had like a terminator in it, we need to install one for ourselves. And that's what the picture on the right is. And I'm just pointing at the resistors where the old one used to be. And currently we're working on installing new terminators. Now I'll pass it on to Sam, who will talk about a little more on the software side of things.
Yeah, so as Anish mentioned, the master vehicle controller is kind of like the brain of the CAN system, and the whole CAN system itself is a network. It's like the nervous system of the car, transmitting all those messages everywhere. So the master vehicle controller has to be programmed with software. We use Simulink, which is an add-in to MATLAB, stands for Matrix Laboratory. It's really good with like mathematical functions. And Simulink is kind of a way to, instead of manually coding all the like syntax in with a bunch of hard to understand language, Simulink is kind of like a flow chart. So we can see where the code is going with arrows and boxes. So it's our job to modify that code, as Anish mentioned, to account for the changes that have been made into the car. So the inputs are interpreted so that the correct outputs are sent out to the modules. So for example, we have a cooling system that cools the electric motors, make sure they don't overheat and ruin themselves. So an example of a job of the CAN system, the master vehicle controller, has to be coded so that it senses the temperature of the electric motor, and then based on how it's programmed, it'll determine the speed at which a pump will have to run to send fluid through the cooling system. So we don't want to run the cooling system pump too fast, or else that'll be a waste of energy, and our job is to be very efficient. But at the same time, we don't want it to run too slow, or else our motors will overheat. So that's just kind of one example, and there's a lot of modules that are in similar situations.
So going back to what Anish was saying about making sure that the connections are there. So we're currently working on the voltage circuitry of the car. And there's two key aspects, which is the safety and also verification that the wires are connected properly. So with what we did was we actually went into the vehicle, drew out wiring diagrams, which is seen on the left side of the screen. And what we're doing is converting it over to digital documentation, which is seen on the right. With this, we're able to make sure that all the connections are when we go trace the wiring, both sides are actually connected to a component. And if not, the program that we're using, VSys, will shoot out a message saying that there's an error, that the circuitry is either open, not connected, or there's some sort of flaw in it. So that's what that helps with, is avoiding any of us to get electrocuted. Although we're working on a low voltage, it's 12 volts. It won't cause too much harm, but you still don't want to run the risk of getting electrocuted. The other portion of converting all the wiring diagrams to electric or to digital is so that when future teams come, it's a lot easier for them to pick up where we started or ended, really, and they can easily go back, and it's it's more standardized because it's more of a template that we have instead of just hand-drawn stuff where we might understand it, but future teams might not understand it completely. And with that, I'll pass it on to Alistair.
So as I previously said, we have to rebuild the cooling system. And this is because, as the team previously mentioned, a previous team actually removed the engine and the generator, which with it took out a section of the cooling system. And so our responsibility is to reclose this loop. And as you know, combustion engines get hot, but because there's some level of inefficiency in the electrical components that are still present in the car, they need to be cooled off, because however much energy or electricity you put into them, a portion of that is released as heat. And like Sam was talking about, if that heat goes unchecked, it could damage the motor, and then you're stuck on the side of the highway without a functioning car. So we have to basically close this loop. And on the left, you can see a very basic sketch of what this loop looks like. And then on the right, you see more what it looks currently and in person, with the radiator mounted and all the tubes connected to each other.
All right, and lastly, Kevin will talk about the Barista Charger mount.
Yeah, so this is the last deliverable that we had. Essentially, what this red box you're seeing is a box that allows you to adapt the voltage that you're plugging in from the type of extension cord that Marion was talking about to the battery. So it transfers the voltage of 120 volts into something that the battery can work with, yeah. So the best way to think of it is essentially the cube that you plug into the wall for your cell phone to charge. Essentially same thing, but whereas that cube costs around $10, this is in the ballpark of $10,000. So it's a really expensive component in the car, and it's something we can't really have shifting around. So my goal as a mechanical engineer was just to find a way to secure this. We actually had to do this project essentially twice, whereas we weren't sure if the box itself was going to be able to fit in the location you see on the right, just because of all the wiring that was going through there. So we designed a mount that would allow for it to go just above that, but we were able to design a simple solution just using two essentially brackets going across to secure this box in place. And then we're not really working too much more on the aesthetics of that, just because that's going to be covered by the trim of the vehicle. So that's the last of the deliverables we had. So now I'm going to send it back to Travis to wrap up.
All right, so we just wanted to thank you today for letting us present our project. I apologize for the speed, but we wanted to make sure that we were trying to fit within that 8:30 time frame. But we wanted to open the floor up to any questions that we may be able to answer about our project. Thank you.
Thank you all. That was fabulous. And you all you exemplify teamwork. It's amazing. Really, really wonderful. Very good. So I'll start off with a question, an obvious question. Will you be able to finish this project before most of you graduate imminently?
That's a yes and no question in the sense that we will have a couple of components remaining. So this project has been on for about a year now, and because of COVID, like we lost access to the garage, and now this semester and the last semester was the only like 8 months that we've actually been physically working with the car. So an expected timeline can be another 4 to 6 months before we can completely test and run this car. As like COVID fades away and people get vaccinated, we'll have more and more access and more people can interact with this car. But then like we will be able to finish our deliverables, but then another aspect of this car is the AC compressor that helps like defog the car, or like those kind of components are also safety components, because if you lose visibility on the road, that can be an issue. But in terms of what we highlighted today, we are aiming to complete that at least. So this project will be about 80% done.
It's an incredible project. So we'll just open the floor to anybody. And we do have members of the Electric Vehicle Club here who are all strong EV proponents and engineers. So I'm sure that you guys have technical questions beyond me.
I have a question, and that's what's the battery pack going to look like? What is the voltage going to operate with, and what kind of batteries?
So it's a lithium ion battery. It's 330 volts, and the current capacity of it is about 12 kilowatt hours. A part of this project is also to upgrade that capacity, and that's where some of our money is going from the grant. Currently it's 12 kilowatt hours, and we're going to add an 18 kilowatt hour battery to this to get it to a good 40. Is that my math right? 30 kilowatt hours. That'll extend the driving range of this vehicle.
Are these, did you say lithium ion batteries?
Yeah.
Where are you getting them?
The one in the car is currently sponsored by a company called A123.
Okay.
So when originally this car was made as part of the EcoCar competition,
Okay.
the team procured a battery, but then with the grant money, we were able to actually reach out to a salvage yard and able to procure a 2018 Chevy Bolt battery that we will reconfigure to integrate with this vehicle.
And the motor, is the motor a DC motor or alternating current motor?
Yeah, it's a GM ETS motor. It's a stock GM component.
I didn't hear you. It's a what stock?
It's a stock GM component.
Okay, from what?
A Saturn Vue.
A Saturn?
A 2009 Saturn Vue.
I just have to confess, I'm not familiar with a electric motor from a Saturn.
I don't know how popular Saturn used to be back in the day, but I
didn't think they had an electric car.
Saturn actually started out as a hybrid vehicle, so I think the motor was working as like it was compatible with an electric battery, like it was compatible with the battery.
I might be able to share a little bit on that, Oliver. I noticed in the slides that the motor and controller had UQM. That was previously Unique Mobility. They're out here in Colorado in Loveland,
right?
And they do a three-phase DC motor is what it's used, and it's similar to some of the motors that are in some of the scooters and stuff in the effect that it uses. It's not an AC motor, it's a pulsating DC motor, but it puts out three-phase pulses to create the rotation. And that's how it works. they're able to put an awful lot of power in a super small, dense capacity, and it's different than a DC, and it's different than an AC. It's a pulsating DC three-phase motor.
What were they used for?
They've used them for everything. They build a lot of motors for military applications in submarines and all that sort of thing. And right now, there's a company out here in Longmont. Actually, they're in Loveland now. They used to be in Longmont. It's called let's see, it's E-Electric motors or something like that. Something E-Electric, and if they actually do conversions. They're right now authorized to do for Ford. They can take a brand new Ford van and they can make it electric, and it still carries a warranty and all that kind of stuff. And they just been bought out by another company, but they have a real unique different way of doing things, and it's been developed over a lot of years.
Interesting.
And David, you had a question about was it a series or parallel hybrid? Do you want to ask that question?
Yeah, originally that View hybrid, was it series or parallel hybrid?
The series architecture. It was a series architecture, yeah. Where the engine was coupled with the generator. That's the UQM generator that you're talking about. And then that powered the battery when the state of charge of the battery would go to about 25%. So yeah, it was a series architecture.
Okay, cool.
I also saw.
Do you need a controller to put in the right kind of electricity into that motor? In other words, you've got your battery pack, but you got to convert the battery voltage to something that the motor can use.
Yeah, so there is a power inverter module that's in between the motor and the battery.
Okay.
So basically what happens is the battery is connected positive, negative into the inverter, and the inverter actually converts it into three-phase that's compatible with the motor itself.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a unique inverter in that it's built specifically for that pulsating DC three-phase motor, and so that you can't take an off-the-shelf controller to control that motor. It's kind of a you got to have them both from the manufacturer.
I saw Bill also had a question in the chat, wanted to address it about a rough budget for this. So we actually have a set budget for our project. The grant itself, it gave us $3,000 to use towards our project, but Penn State also provides an additional in each $1,000 per project group. So we're working with a $4,000 total budget for this project.
It seems kind of tight.
Yeah,
You're right, it is.
It's something.
They've got a lot of in-house stuff and already that unique ability and all that. They've got a lot of stuff already.
There's another question from Dave Nepley. Does the charger shut off when the car is fully charged?
yeah. So that'll come as part of the MVC that Sam and I were talking about, and that is a crucial controls aspect, because you don't want the car to be charging and let's say you put it on drive by mistake. You don't want to drive with the car like pulling the charger out. So that is a controls aspect of the car.
Okay.
All goes back to that software that Sam was talking about. So that we input code so that it hits a loop where it's like if the battery is at 100%, it'll terminate charging. So
Great. And are there any questions for Marion that she did not already answer in the chat? I know she's been trying to answer these questions. Are there any other kind of homeowner or, sorry, car buyer questions for her?
How many miles did she put on it so far?
My car? Well, it's been COVID time, so we're like only around 8,000, so we're not.
Lots more to go.
Lots more to go, exactly. Yeah, someone in the chat asked whether the Bolt was going to start doing a better job, and in terms of just getting kilowatts acceptable. And I don't know the answer. I know the 2021, they've changed the algorithm so that it is better at charging. But I do know that other cars have a better ability to charge at faster speeds. But, you know, Tesla is still the leader by a long shot. But yeah, if that's something you really want to, that would require, I think, research. And it's just changing every day. And so many new cars are out there.
It
So
feels that with so many more manufacturers, you know, Volkswagen and BMW and all these other folks
right.
jumping into the market, that the competition will force everybody to up their game. So
Yeah, I
it
think so.
feels as though the next couple of years we're going to see a tremendous amount of change in all these cars. So even
Yeah.
Tesla is, you know, having to keep, you know, innovating and pushing ahead to retain
Yeah,
its market
and
share.
I do wonder what's going to happen with Tesla and their supercharging, and you know, their regular chargers, they will work with a regular car, but they're just like what you see at a grocery store. They don't really give you the fast charging, but to date, that charging network just doesn't work with other cars. So hopefully that will change. And as more, you know, the Electrify America and the EV Go, they actually, Electrify America got a lot of the VW money, which was when they were found, you know, when they were doing their cheating scam. they had to pay a lot of money, and the state used a lot of that money for building out some of the fast charging, which is kind of cool.
Hans, did you have a question?
Yes, you mentioned that the seats weren't, your husband doesn't like the seats. What's wrong with the seats?
They're just uncomfortable. I mean, I'm fine, but when he gets in it, it takes him about 10 minutes and he's just like, my back is killing me. Now he has a bad back, so he does have a bad back, but if he, you know, it is much worse than other cars. And if you read about it, that is the thing that people are ragging on him for. Now I've heard that the newer car, they have addressed that. So, but you can actually find YouTube videos on how to put stuffing into your seat to make it more comfortable. And so it's definitely a known issue. So, but.
I know we're a little past time, but I wanted to make sure everyone knew that PICO recently filed for and was approved for a time of use rate. And one of the one of the applications for its time of use rate is with an eye to EV charging. So it may soon be even less expensive to charge overnight. So the idea is to get EV owners to charge off peak. So rather than, you know, in the summertime, you know, plugging in at the same time that your air conditioner is cranking and we have our normal high peak, waiting until very late in the evening with a timer and just charging your car overnight automatically. The TOU rate, I don't think the details are out yet. If anyone on the call knows otherwise, please let me know, but that will be coming soon.
Well, if they had in their, this is Ron, I think when they had their petition out earlier last year, it was a super off-peak period. So they have a peak, an on-peak, and off-peak, and a super off-peak, and that super off-peak was between midnight and 6 in the morning. And I'm sure that structure is probably what they're going to have in place.
Yeah, any word on when they're going to implement that?
I thought it was going to be the turn of the year, but I'm not sure. I did have a question for Marion though. Curious if I'm kind of betting on the fact that you're doing a little bit of a long trip. In the wintertime, you're wearing a heavy coat because you wouldn't dare want to use that battery for like heating up your car.
I do want to say that I did drive to Harrisburg once, and it was in the winter, and I didn't turn the heater on, and it was a mistake because my feet were cold. Because I thought, heated seat, heated hands. I went to the meeting that I was going to, and I spent the first 2 hours with my feet freezing. So just turn the heat on, okay? Just turn the heat on.
Gotta buy better socks.
Not that big a deal.
Funny.
What was?
Well, I want to thank all of the presenters. You were all tremendous, and it was a really great session. We learned a lot. Most of what you engineers are talking about is over my head, but nonetheless, I still learned a lot. And I really thank all of you for what you're doing, and also for sharing it with us. It was great. And Marion, you're an inspiration, so we'll all follow in your footsteps. So thank you everyone for coming. Really appreciate it, and great to see all of you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Alrighty.
Yeah, thanks. It's great.
Good night,
Thank you
all.
guys for letting us be here.
Sure.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for
Thank
coming.
you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.